Hello, my name is Agnieszka Bień-Kacała and I am Associate Professor at Nicholas Copernicus University in Toruń, Poland. I would like to introduce my co-author, Professor Drinóczi, who is a visiting professor at the University of Minas Gerais, Brazil. We are grateful to Professor Giuseppe Martinico for the invitation and the opportunity to present our book to you. The book is titled Illiberal Constitutionalism in Poland and Hungary, the Deterioration of Democracy, Misuse of Human Rights and Abuse of the Rule of Law. The book is published by Routledge this year. It was supported by the Polish National Science Center. So based on what happened in Hungary until 2015, when PiS started its governance, and seeing what is going on in Poland right after the election, we were interested in the extent of the deterioration of the rule of law, democracy and human rights in Poland and Hungary, and wanted to see if it both quantitatively and qualitatively approached the state of authoritarianism, as many in scholarly literature claimed already at that time. We started our book by explaining why, despite the differences, we can still compare Hungary and Poland. Briefly, because these differences have in fact not considerably impacted either the emergence of the current political and legal situation or its apparent stability in either country.
Yes, thank you, Agnieszka, for introducing me. And so let me just quickly continue. So at the beginning of the book, under the title Terms, we discuss some of the theoretical frameworks, that is, the notions of constitutionalism and constitutional democracy, in the light of which and because of which we felt it necessary to develop the concept of illiberal constitutionalism. We go further in conceptualizing the term as a reality and not only as a theoretical possibility, as Mark Tushnet does. Based on Graham Walker, we also elaborate more on its actual implementation by using qualitative analysis and quantitative data of several indexes such as Freedom House, We Democracy, World Justice Project, Rule of Law Index, and others. In our view, illiberal constitutionalism is a stage in the process of authoritarianization of EU member states, which is like illiberalization of constitutionalism, mainly in the post-socialist region that has been hit by autocrat populist leaders in the second decade of the 21st century. They have brought about the deterioration of constitutional democracy and the hollowing out of its components. The gradualness of the deterioration and the embeddedness of EU law and human rights commitments in the daily adjudication of law, regardless of their weakness and flaws, have kept these states turning to modern authoritarianism. This phenomenon constitutes one element of the concept of illiberal constitutionalism. Other constitutive features of the system are illiberal legality instead of the rule of law, illiberal democracy instead of democracy without adjectives, and illiberalization of human rights instead of their protection. We also observe that the detrimental changes in both Poland and Hungary have received steady and continuous political support. One of the reasons is the rise of nationalism and right-wing populist politics combined with autocratic leaders. It has led us to investigate further why this transformation, which is completely different from the democratization process after the fall of communism, is so appealing to the population. So in the part of identity, we argue that an unbalanced constitutional identity has been molded throughout Polish and Hungarian history, in which emotional traits of collective victimhood and collective narcissism and the longing for a charismatic leader are noticeable. An investigation of the value orientation of Poles and Hungarians in the post-communist past and beyond shows distinct features as compared to the societies in Western states. This could explain why people wanted a democratic transition in 1989 and 1990, and why they have been continuously supporting illiberal and autocratic leaders in the past 11 and 6 years. Constitutionalism obviously presupposes a kind of constraint on public power. We discuss it in parts on limits. We have put the Hungarian and Polish regression into a regional, which is European, and a broader context, in contrast to authoritarianism, to see how they fare in comparative analysis, whether they still maintain some characteristics that make them constitutionalist. Based on both quantitative and qualitative analysis, we found that illiberal constitutionalism is a separate concept, and it is neither modern authoritarianism nor authoritarian constitutionalism. We have also contextualized the issue by putting the rule of law deterioration into a European perspective. And for the analysis of the rule of law situation in both Poland and Hungary, we have introduced the concept of European rule of law, which is, in our view, could be considered as a kind of regional constraint on public power. So now, being able to collect these characteristics of illiberal constitutionalism, it could also suggest some sort of stability of the system. Therefore, we have started to investigate whether it is possible to detect a clear pattern regarding the methods by which the remodeling, this illiberal remodeling commenced, was consolidated, and through which its results are maintained. And I think that Agnieszka would talk about this stability a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, Tima, I would like to tell you that we have identified 4 such patterns. The first is capturing the constitution and constitutionalism, which has been done gradually through formal, mainly in Hungary, and informal, in Poland, constitutional changes, and their combination in Hungary. This has been extended to the occupation of the key positions in every sphere of the constitutional system. The second is that we have noted that besides the political branches, the other major player is each country's constitutional court. Considering the regulatory alteration to the constitutional courts and the role they play in our civil law jurisdictions, we propose to view the changes and the methods of remodeling as illiberal judicialization of politics instead of juristocracy and political constitutionalism. The third method of remodeling is pushing the limits to achieve certain goals. It is a political and legal game comprising a cynical approach to criticism, and it features a combination of different variations of backing off. And the fourth pattern that helps keeping the illiberal system stable is related to strategies that could assist in the retransformation of the backsliding regimes. These strategies could be the use of militant democracy, multi-tiered amendment design and references to the transnational norms, application of the doctrine of unconstitutional constitutional amendments, empowering citizens, and the use of the so-called emergency judicial power. We must report sadly, though, that the governments have rendered these measures or design elements or strategies ineffective, which greatly contributed to the consolidation of illiberal constitutionalism. We see this phenomenon as something that could contribute to the stability of liberal constitutionalism in our countries. So, Tima, Professor Drinóczi, please continue.
Yeah, thanks. So now how we concluded. So we briefly conclude in the last part of the book, obviously, and now I would like to make like 5 points as a conclusion. First, constitutionalism doesn't necessarily have to be liberal. And the second, illiberal constitutionalism is a deterioration from liberal constitutionalism towards authoritarianism, but has not reached that point yet. In illiberal constitutionalism, and this is the third point, the liberal and non-liberal or illiberal value orientation of the population can intermittently prevail. Fourth, illiberal constitutionalism is a coherent theory in its illiberal and weakly constrained manner. Lastly, lessons learned mostly for others. Illiberal constitutionalism is not only destructive to the common European project, but it manipulatively exaggerates and exploits the existing value orientation of the people in a way that is not compatible with liberal constitutionalism. It ultimately could or even should result in these states leaving the EU or being isolated within the EU, which would be detrimental to all Hungarians and Poles. So with this very pessimistic tone and having considering the events of the past months concerning the Polish judicial reform, we would like to thank you for watching this and listening to us.
Yes, thank you very much. Enjoy the book like we were enjoying writing it. And please let us know what you think about that. Thanks.